As a dry nation, Egypt relies mainly on the River Nile and groundwater for its irrigation. But with a limited share of the Nile and very little reusable groundwater, the country is fast-tracking the advancement of its irrigation systems to save water and boost productivity of its cultivated land. CGTN's Adel Al-Makhroui has more.
Egypt cultivates some 9.4 million fadans of agricultural land. That consumes 85% of the country's Nile water. The government classified 6.1 million fadans as old land, most of which use flood irrigation. It's a traditional way of distributing water by pumping it from a source like the Nile River and distribute uncalculated volumes of water across the entire land through small channels. This irrigation system has been practiced for centuries, and farming takes place around the Nile on fertile lands like the ones here in Meet Abu Ali village. Farmers here continue to enjoy abundant waters for their food production.
Sometimes there's little water during the dry season, but usually we have plenty of water. It's everywhere.
However, this is a wrong assumption by the 29-year-old Hassan Saleh. The fact is, Egypt has the lowest water share per capita ever registered in the country. As can be seen in Meet Abu Ali, farmers have the luxury to use flood irrigation because of their proximity to the Nile River. The government, however, is moving in a completely different direction to avoid wasting billions of cubic meters every year by use of these water pumps and water channels. Far away from the Nile banks into the Egyptian desert landscape, 3.3 million fadans of Egypt's cultivated land lies. The government classifies them as new lands and wants all of these recently cultivated areas to apply new kinds of irrigation systems meant to save water. In the last decades, the new lands have attracted individual farmers keen on utilizing modern irrigation techniques.
I discovered that traditional irrigation is a waste of time and water. It eats the fertilizers used, it eats the pesticide and manure needed. Drip irrigation is totally different, it saves everything. You can water the land any time of the day, morning or night.
However, many farmers still practice flood irrigation in these new lands. Meet Hassan Shamsuddin, the PhD holder in soil and water management, is leading a national project at the Agriculture Ministry to develop the irrigation systems in the country. He's responsible for identifying farms violating the irrigation laws in the new lands.
We want to decrease the shortage in water and fill the food security gap. To do so, we need to save water. So we want to spread the usage of sprinkling and drip irrigation to create water for cultivating more land.
When completed, this project is estimated to save some 1.3 billion cubic meters of water annually. To introduce modern irrigation systems, though, every fadan could cost up to $1,000. It's a lot of money for farmers here. To ease that financial pressure, the government is providing low-interest loans for them. Part of Shamsuddin's job is to create awareness among farmers about the benefits of these new systems.
It costs a lot of money to set up, but in return, it saves a lot in the daily operation. Instead of turning on the pumps for 5 hours to irrigate the land in the traditional way, I now operate it for 15 minutes. That drops the cost of gasoline or electricity bills. The productivity is incomparable. It's much higher. Modern irrigation could be double in some products.
By law, all new cultivated lands must use modern irrigation systems. To see for myself how these irrigation technologies are increasing land productivity, I went to Wadi al-Natron. It's a huge cultivated desert area northwest of Cairo.
Chasing its food security, the Egyptian Western Desert is promising hope. Patches of green are growing out of its lifeless yellow as the country moves to grow all kinds of crops in the sand.
I met Mohammed Gamal, a 40-year-old engineer whose passion has always revolved around agriculture. The young man is managing the cultivation of some 2,800 fadans here.
And to pump this, we use about 125 horsepower pump.
From pivots, sprinklers, and drip pipelines, all sorts of irrigation techniques are being used here. This entire area depends mainly on groundwater.
This is the key to the success of cultivating Egypt's Western Desert: water management. Because it costs a lot to allocate and distribute water in such areas, water costs up to 35% of the end product for any crop here in this area.
That makes producers here face much more challenges to gain a competitive edge in the global market. Gamal's job is to ensure that his land produces the biggest volumes with the least water needed. Egypt is the #1 country in the world in citrus production. It's also among the top in potatoes, strawberries, and has been recently expanding massively in producing sweet corn.
We have to work more in efficiency to reduce the cost, to compete other countries that they have high organic soil, organic matter, and they have rain.
So you mean it could be better if Egypt, instead of focusing to cultivate the things it needs, it should cultivate the crops that it can export and then purchase what it needs?
Sure, it's better because this is cash crop. You can supply for Europe in winter because, as you know, in winter, Europe and Russia, it's freezing. So you can export fresh cash crop for them, and you can import the other need like wheat and corn, because here the production cost is so high. So you have to focus on cash crops.
Because of the proper irrigation systems, the new cultivated lands in the desert are producing most of Egypt's agricultural products, despite that they are nearly half the size of the fertile lands on the banks of the Nile. That's thanks to the advanced irrigation techniques used here. عادل المحروقي, CGTN, وادي النطرون, Egypt.